Equilibrium is a word that's been going through my mind the last couple of days. After reading a lot of the employment data that's been coming out and a lot of the jobs news, I know there was a JOLTS report earlier, and then we're all waiting on the jobs release tomorrow as well to understand a little bit more about what's happening in the jobs market. But equilibrium's come to mind because I'm starting to feel and see kind of the messiness and in trying to understand what's happening. I know this is a running theme on this channel for the last few months where, looking at all the employment data, looking at the indicators that we're seeing with our clients at Daggerfinn, and trying to figure out, we're seeing a bunch of layoffs, but jobs are, there's still job growth. And we're seeing a bunch of hiring freezes, but, everything seems to still be growing. So just trying to, sort through all the indicators and then figure out exactly what's happening. I just wanted to bring up some data that Employment Boost put out recently. And this is a company that does outplacement services. They do resume writing, interview coaching, that kind of stuff. And they've been a client of Daggerfinn's for a little while. And then we helped them conduct some survey data recently. They came up with some interesting findings, and you can find a little bit more in-depth information about this latest data dump on the Employment Boost YouTube channel, where actually I have a conversation with serial entrepreneur James Phillip and the director of client success at Employment Boost, Ryan Miller, about the findings. But just briefly, kind of the idea that we found that, on average, less experienced workers over the last 12, 18 months have been most likely to have been, at least when you consider cohorts, have been the most likely to have changed jobs. And they've also been the most likely to have received, more compensation as a function of changing jobs. I think we've all seen that curve now, or the figure where, if you had moved during the Great Resignation, you might have gained, 1 or 2 or 3 percentage points more in terms of compensation than you would have had you stayed still at your current company. And we're seeing that those individuals, that cohort is especially feeling that their company is going to be conducting layoffs over the next 6 months. And the correlation is pretty strong. I mean, if you look at the data on screen, cohorts that are a little bit more experienced or have a little bit more tenure in the workforce, you can see that they're less likely to have changed jobs, less likely to have received a raise, and they're also far more secure in knowing that their company maybe won't be conducting layoffs. I think it's just a function of a few different things. James actually makes really interesting points in our recording on the Employment Boost channel around, more experienced workers will have kind of worked through 2008 and seen the kind of workers that were getting laid off or getting fired as a function of the great financial crisis. And, have made strategic moves in the last 2 years that show some learning from that time. The last in, first out, I think, is something that we've talked about on this channel quite a lot. And I think it's very clear. I mean, anecdotal evidence, at least from sales data at Employment Boost, is that layoffs are definitely up, which is contrary to what we're seeing with the jobs numbers. I think we saw jobs growth, but a little less earlier in the week. I think we saw unemployment claims down a little bit too, but we're seeing layoffs, and we're seeing layoffs at a lot of different companies, a lot of different industries. And I think that points to maybe not that, the economy is falling apart, and you've got to separate what you see at the stock market and what happens at kind of the working level of the economy. What I don't think is happening is that we're seeing the world fall apart. What we could be seeing is really a lot of these companies being prudent and saying, what, our plans over the last 12 months were to grow. And, we've hired 80, 90, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 people. And, let's just be a bit careful now and pull back. And, when you do that, it doesn't take much common sense to say, okay, well, the company was running with this, whatever it is, 200 people up until 2020. We were doing fine. We decided to grow in 2021, 22. We added 600 individuals. And now we want to go back to the way it was before. So we want to get back to 2,000 people. Which 600 people are you going to get rid of? It becomes quite clear that it's probably going to be the ones that just came in because, loyalty is something that corporations value. Tenure is something that corporations value because of the experience that you bring and then the mastery, or at least the specific knowledge of doing work at that company. And so that's maybe what we're seeing now with a lot of these layoffs. And I think that's something that we're going to see a lot of going forward over at least the next 6-12 months, is as companies try to navigate rate hikes, they navigate, lower demand for their services, earnings misses, different things like that, we're going to see layoffs that maybe don't indicate, okay, this is a huge cut and we're going to have to downsize. We're just going to get to the place where we find equilibrium again, where we were pre-COVID. So that's been going through my mind a little bit as an idea. Let me know what you think is happening in the economy in the comments section below. And especially kind of when you see this data here, what you think of the correlation, and then what you think of just looking at your own friends and your own cohorts, your own social groups. Is this what you're seeing too, where less experienced workers are more concerned about layoffs? And more experienced workers are less concerned because maybe they haven't changed job, or maybe it's something else. Maybe it's they were more economically or financially secure on their own, just in general because of having been working longer, and then how that relates to whether they feel like their companies are going to be conducting layoffs or not. Really interesting stuff.